check. Good. So I'm Max Ceron. Max Ceron, CWB Association Welding Podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, Welding Podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome back to the CWB Association podcast. I'm Max Ceron with you guys as always, here to have a great show. Today's special guest that we have today is Anthony San Andreas. So I said that with an accent because that's very Spanish looking. Anthony, how you doing?
It is very.
So where do you? I gotta ask, where the last name comes from? Is it are you Spanish or are you Spanish relative or Filipino or something?
No, so yeah, so you've got it there on that last one. So I'm Filipino, and as you know, like every Filipino, even all the ones I know, all their last names are Spanish.
You know, and that's super interesting because the Philippines had been, quite a few different cultures had established bases on the Philippines, and the Philippines has a pretty good mix of history in terms of the people that were there. But like you said, the majority do have Spanish last names.
Yeah, like my cousin is Gonzalez, De Leon. They're all Spanish last names.
And we
It's because the Spanish that came and they colonized like the Philippines. They kind of like conquered us, but then I guess at some point they just started to love us, right?
and we also share some language, right? So like you guys have the same numbering system and the days of the week, right? So can you speak
so
Tagalog fluently?
Konti lang, so like just a little bit.
All right, cool. So
and same with Spanish, un poquito.
Un poquito, yeah. So you're here to represent Xiris systems, and so first of all, what is Xiris?
So Xiris, we make like so we do cameras and like inspection systems and software. So that's kind of our main business, like basic cameras and software for all kinds of like welding inspection processes.
Okay, so when you do cameras, you're talking about cameras that can resist the high temperatures and all the wear and tear of a normal welding situation, I assume.
Yeah, so we have like different models for different applications, but like since you're talking about wear and tear, we have like our E camera, which is environmentally enclosed, so that can withstand your high temperature, that can withstand your harsh environments, and also all of our cameras, because they're made for welding, they can resist high amounts of light. So when in a usual camera, light will come in and that will actually damage the sensor, because the sensor inside of a camera is only meant for so much light or so much light intensity, but our camera can take all of that intense light and process that information. So it's not harmful to the sensor. It's actually good for the sensor because you're getting more and more information. So that's how our welding open arc cameras can see like through the arc, and you can see through all the bright light that welding creates. So then you can see all the detail and stuff. So that's kind of that's our open arc cameras, and they're pretty cool. If you've seen any of our
I've seen
online.
lots, and I've been to a few trade shows where they have them there, and we were about to buy one actually at the college before COVID hit, and that kind of scaled everything back. So Anthony, you were you born in Canada or did you come from the Philippines?
So no, I was born in Canada, so yeah, no accent. Like I was born in just outside of Toronto, Ontario. So yeah, and I grew up here and everything. So I'm like first generation. My parents did come from the Philippines.
All right, cool. Like I mean, I wasn't born here, but I don't have an accent. Although some people do say I do have an accent, but I work really hard at not having one. So
I don't hear one. So if you're
good.
trying to go for that, then good job.
Now you said you grew up outside of Toronto, so young Anthony growing up.
Yeah.
What did you get into? What was the first paths that you took into to kind of lead you to where you are now? So high school, what were your passions?
Well, when I was a kid, I did a lot of things. Like when I was like a teenager, I was like a DJ. I also did like music production. I played a lot of instruments. So I did a lot of music kind of growing up, and then I got into a lot of different things. I did magic, like illusions and all that stuff, like David Blaine. I did. Um, I took when I was a young kid, I took everything apart. I'd take my dad's screwdriver and I would just unscrew everything I could. I was very curious on how things work. So I would take apart everything. Sometimes I couldn't put it back together, but I would like to take apart everything just to know what's inside. So that kind of brought me into technology, and I love like computers, video games, anything like electronic. And that's kind of my background. I went to school for electronics engineering. And so like I just love electronics and gadgets and stuff like that.
So
But I have many hobbies, like so much that like don't have enough time for all of them anymore.
it sounds like we are brothers of different mothers. I am exactly the same way. I love my tech. I grew up around tech. I still have almost all my computers that I've ever owned, right back to a VIC 20. So like,
Oh, really?
and they're
Wow.
all in running order with like software that runs. And one day I want to have like a weird nerd museum in my basement. But um, it's funny that you talk about taking things apart and putting them back together. That's been a theme in so many of my podcasts of people that end up in kind of these fields, is this like need to understand the inner workings of mechanical instruments, right? So I'm going to ask you a question to see
Yeah.
how nerdy you really were. Did you have like a pail or bucket of leftover parts that you would keep just in case you could use them somewhere else?
I'm actually sitting at my desk, and if I open this drawer, there's just like screws, cables, SATA cables, hard drives, you name it. I got one here. It's a broken Surface. I got a keyboard. I got lots, everything here. And then downstairs, I've got all my, yeah. So I've got.
I totally know. I got a garage full. At this point, I have like a separate residence for my toys, right?
Yeah, yeah. At some point, it becomes a problem, but I've had to go through the really old stuff and figure out what is like still good. Like I've thrown out cables. I'm like, I'm never gonna use this firewire cable ever again.
Well, it's interesting because it depends what your definition of a problem is. Is it a problem for you or is it a problem for someone else?
I just try to keep minimal now. Like I used to have rooms full of music equipment. Just like it's like now I just don't have space, and I've moved around a few times, so I'm trying to be more as minimal as I can. Try to have like the best one thing, and I don't do music too often anymore. So
Awesome. What kind of
yeah,
music
trying
did
to
you
keep it
play or what
minimal.
instrument did you play? What was your favorite one?
Oh well, the piano is probably my favorite, right? Like to me, I could because I also did digital music. I virtualized a lot of different kind of instruments. Like I think piano is one of the best bases for learning music. So I played the piano. I tried learning the guitar, but it was really hard on my hands. I played the drums. So it's basically the piano and like drums that I played the most. But then I got into like digital music creation and doing all that on my computer. And I spent summers making songs and stuff. And I even got through some of my connections, I got music put out for like football teams and stuff when they run out for like in colleges and stuff. And yeah, I think I even had a song like in a commercial one time
That's
through my
awesome.
friend, and I submitted it and they used it.
That's super cool.
Yeah, so lots of cool.
Yeah, I also have a musical background. I was in a band for years when I was younger, but I can only really play guitar. I'm not really good at
Yeah.
anything else. And I don't know if the word play is
Mhm.
really that good because I was in like a punk metal band, so it was more like Smash, but it was fun.
Yeah, I was never in a band. I was more by myself, and I knew how to play them, so I would just track all of the instruments myself in, and then arrange them and mix them later on.
Awesome. So you went to school for electrical engineering. Where did you go to school for that?
I went to Niagara College twice. I did electrical engineering and electronics engineering, and then I also went to Mohawk College and I did um, computer network systems engineering. So I went three times to two different schools, just because every time I went to do something, that kind of led me down another path. So I did like computer network engineering, and then I figured, oh man, I really like hardware and electronics because they had that part of it. So then I went and did the electronics course, and then from there I was like, oh, high power and electricity and all that. And so I went into electricals. It just kind of threw me down this path of wanting to know more and more. But at some point, you got to cut yourself off.
Well, not really. You just got to go make money for a while and then you can go back.
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. I totally get you. I worked in between all of them, but I'm like, oh man, I just got to have a real full time job and stop learning. Like I can learn at home now online, so I'll do that. And that's what I do a lot of times. I go online and try to learn about a lot of different things that I'm interested in.
Yeah, and I think most people that are successful in any regard in any field generally are life learners. They don't just learn what they have to. They tend to go up and above and learn as much as they can. It's a common theme that we see with a
Yeah,
lot of people. I'm sure you've seen it too.
yeah. Yeah, and it's just I feel like with me, I just want to know. I feel more confident when I know how things work and how even how people work. I've actually delved into psychology as well because I've always wondered why people do what they do and why people act, and maybe even try to solve my own stuff going on inside.
Well, good luck. Autodiagnosis is
I just want to
very
know how
tough.
everything works. Yeah.
So you went to school 3 times. I don't know how many years of school that is. It depends on the course, I guess. But you
Yeah.
finished your at some point you ended up at Xiris. Now, how old is Xiris as a company?
So Xiris is about 31 years old. So they were started in 1989, and back then, because we're Xiris Automation right now,
Hmm.
we started off as Xiris Inc. And then at some point they got so they did custom solutions for like machine vision. So they did like semiconductors, electronics, like pharmaceutical, automotive, and then they were actually acquired by this company. It's called CRS Robotics in '96. They're also based in Burlington. So, but after they got acquired, a CRS fell into some like financial difficulty, and actually, so they actually had shut down. So then, a few employees in '97 bought back Xiris Inc. And we made it Xiris Automation in 1997.
And at what point were you involved in this company?
So I started about 3 years ago at Xiris.
Okay, so it had been around for a while.
Yeah, it's been around for a while. I wasn't there for a while, but because I was all those years they started. I was in school.
Right, with your 3 diplomas.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
now you started there. You say 3 years ago. What were you doing before Xiris? What kind of jobs were you doing, and kind of what work experience did you have?
Oh, so I did a lot of different things. I guess one of my first jobs out of school, as I worked for another company called Everts. They're actually down the street from Xiris currently, and I did a lot of like broadcast electronics kind of work there. So like testing and troubleshooting and like kind of repairs and stuff like that. And they make uh, lots of cool TV electronics there. And that was so I worked there for like 2 3 years, I think. And then I did a lot of different things. I worked at a casino. I worked at IMAX. I've worked at like kind of a lot of different cool tech jobs, and you see a lot of cool things in working in electronics.
So
But
did you find
I've
yourself
worked lots of jobs.
bouncing
But then I
around?
finally,
Did you find yourself bouncing around between jobs, or were you
yeah,
actively always looking for new jobs?
yeah, I was always kind of looking, and also sometimes I would just get bored. Like I worked at, I just got so good at doing like a job, I would just get bored and maybe look for another thing to learn. And it's that constant need for learning and striving for more all the time.
And so then, what were you doing right before Xiris?
I worked at IMAX for a little bit, and that's what I was there. But then I was looking and I saw found Xiris, and it's like this company's pretty cool. Like I like the kind of stuff they're doing. It's like they're local. It was just pretty cool. Like their cameras were kind of intriguing because it's like, oh man, super high dynamic range. This is awesome. Look at these things.
Yeah, that is super interesting. I find it interesting. I love wondering the technology behind weld cams or really high speed, high frequency cameras.
Mhm.
They're pretty cool. Now, when you decided to come into Xiris, as with all this electronics and engineering background, how much did you have to learn about welding? Like, I mean, how much of the learning curve of the weld world did you learn, or are you learning, or do you not really care about the welding stuff? You just focus on the tech behind the cameras.
Well, no, I think welding is like super cool, and I've never really gotten a chance to weld. But through the job, I've actually welded a few times now, and it's pretty cool. So like when I came into the job, like everything but the welding I had, because I came from a computer networking background, computers, came from electronics, like even cameras. I had a big passion for cameras growing up, and still do. So I know all about like camera optics and stuff like that. So I had everything except for welding. So that's like what I picked up on the job because I kind of I go in the field, I see all the real processes. I get to see it firsthand. So I go to a lot of schools, and when I go to a school, sometimes the instructor will teach the students, and I just sit there and I watch and I go, oh, I'm learning as he's teaching, like So I almost get a free lesson in welding, like every time I go out somewhere, and I get to see a different process, see how, like, it's pretty cool how much I've picked up. And like, and at one time I was out of school and they actually let me weld. So like that was one of my first times welding, and it's pretty cool. So I've gotten to weld a few times. So I think I'm picking it up,
You
and
know,
it's pretty fun. So it's cool.
maybe everyone that's listening to this podcast is going to have to be careful now. If Anthony shows up to your school, you guys are going to have to send him a bill because he's getting some free education out there.
Oh no.
It ain't going to be free no more.
It's like now we need a discount on the camera.
Yeah. All right, so we're right at the halfway mark here. So, for all the people listening, this has been a super fun interview. This is I got Anthony San Andreas here. We're gonna take a break for our commercials, our sponsors here, and we'll be back right after them. So hold tight.
The CWB Group is Canada's national welding certification organization. We're pleased to offer welder testing at our state-of-the-art facility in Nisku. We provide welders the opportunity to practice for and take a CSA W47.1 welder qualification test. Book your welder qualification test with Canada's welding experts. Give us a call today at 1-800-844-6790 or visit us online at cwbgroup.org to book your training or testing slot. The CWB Group. We are welding.
The CWB Association membership is new, improved, and focused on you. The CWB Association is offering a free membership with a full suite of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Become a member today. Register at cwbassociation.org.
And we're back here on the CWB Association podcast. I'm Max Ceron with you guys, and we have Anthony from Xiris here telling us about his educational journey and getting started at Xiris Automation, where he works now, and kind of getting his feet wet in the world, or eyes wet in the world of welding, and the relationship between the welding cameras and the welding processes and the learning curve there. So, Anthony, you're picking up the welding now, and you're watching the, I guess, the purpose of the cameras, like why it exists and what they need to do. um, how hard is it for this technology to advance? I mean, between in your window of 3 years, how many advancements have been made? Now, are they purely on the technological side, like the physical part side, which, and then do you guys do that, or is it mainly on the software rendering side of it, which I assume you guys also would have a part of that?
Yeah, I think it's both. So software and hardware. So we do both software and hardware in-house. So we have our own electronics engineers, we have our own software engineers. So they're always working on the next new thing. So like in software, we're always like we're doing like machine learning. So now we can detect certain things just by looking at it. We're always adding new features. We've just added last year audio. So not only can you see what you're looking at, and you also get that audio aspect. So like as a welder, like um, when you're doing like say MIG welding, it's a nice sizzle when you're doing it nicely. But if something happens, you're too far out, you'll hear pops and stuff like that. That's something that you can now capture and listen to later on. So we added audio. Um, for hardware, we're always changing that too. So like we're always taking constant feedback. So our main camera is the 1000E. So that's the environmental one. That's for your like industrial type applications. We also have like a R&D cameras, the 1000. So it's a little bit smaller, but more customizable. And then one of our newest cameras, it's called the 700. It's like a little slim, it's almost like a lipstick. It's that slim. So we use that for like places that the other two cameras can't fit. So the other two cameras are quite a bit bigger, but the new one is smaller. We pretty much re-engineered it, crammed all the electronics from the bigger camera into a much smaller camera. So it's the exact same electronics without losing like any quality in the image. So we're just kind of always innovating. You always got to keep pushing it, because if you don't keep pushing it yourself, someone's going to catch up to you and maybe exceed you.
And how tight is the market? Like, how much competition are you guys facing? Like, how I know of a few other camera markets out there. Like I said, I was looking at
Yeah.
buying one, and there's a few. How tight is that race?
Well, it depends on what you're looking at. If you're looking at the camera by itself, not looking at any of the price, like, and for like what you really want, like feature set, like I think I'm biased because I work at Xiris, but Xiris has one of the best like cameras image. You're just looking at the image. If you're looking at price, we've come down actually a lot, and we're now more competitive, but we are on a little bit of the higher end because of the better image. We're actually all digital, where some of the competitors are analog. We have at least twice the resolution of like the similar cameras in the price range. So we've got kind of a good advantage, but we're on a little bit of the higher end. Yep.
And then in terms of like resolution, like what kind of resolutions are you talking about? Like, I mean, the average person's going to be thinking about 4K. I know my gaming laptop is 8K. You know, like where are you looking at for a camera resolution?
Well, we're at 1280 by 1024. It's not 4K or anything, but if you look at all of the like competitors, they're at least 640. So we're at least double that. And the image is really nice. So it scales nicely too. So if you see it on like a large screen, it actually looks better on a bigger screen than on a small screen. So like I'll record a weld on my laptop, it'll look good. Then I blow it up to a nice like 50-inch. And I'm like, whoa, this looks amazing. You can really see all the detail and everything. So it scales nicely. And it because it's digital too, right? So you can also fine tune the image exactly how you want and get exactly what you want out of it. As where if you use an analog camera, it's just kind of that's it, right?
Well, let me tell you, I did a web presentation for the CWA Association here in Regina 2 weeks ago with a company called ReadyArc. And I have an old industrial phone. I don't know if you remember those ones that were really popular about 5 years ago that came with like the rugged waterproof exterior and like GPS and they had like the push to talk.
Yeah, yeah.
They're like those international work phones.
Hmm.
I had an extra one lying around from when I did a tour of Africa for work, and I decided, you know what? Why don't I just try to weld? Thinking about you guys, because I'm like, I got these guys coming in a few months, and I was like, I'm gonna try to weld my own or film my own welding, and I just strapped on a Shade 12 lens onto the front of my phone and put it on a stand and recorded the weld, and it was absolutely terrible. It like wouldn't focus. The light was like it was just all over the place. And then I started thinking
Yeah,
about
no,
the optics and the work that goes into it.
yeah. So yeah, some people just try to put a shade in front of it and they think that'll work, but it's actually our sensor in tandem with like specific filters that block out specific wavelengths to get that image. So unless you have a really high dynamic range sensor, even with like a shade, you're not going to do anything, and you might eventually burn out your sensor in your camera. Because I've heard people say, "Why don't I just strap a filter in front of a GoPro?" And I've had people do that, and they're like, "I don't know, for whatever reason, the GoPro just stopped working after a few months." And that's kind of the reason why, because you're burning out the sensor on the camera.
So aside from the optics, so you got the visual picture, like so that's the feed that's coming in, the quality of the feed. How does the camera deal with the heat intensity, the temperature range? Do you just basically have to back it off and the camera has to have the zoom capability, or is the camera built with better
No,
heat dissipation?
yeah. So first thing we do is it has really good heat dissipation, so you can actually have the camera without cooling up to like 100 degrees Fahrenheit, like about 40 Celsius. And so you don't really need cooling in that situation. But once you're ambient, basically, if you're really uncomfortable and can't live in that environment, then the camera will need cooling as well. So it's probably just as good as your body. So like if you can stand out in 40 degrees Celsius, then the camera will too. But it has a cooling block, so it dissipates heat really well. And then after that, we have cooling. So once you go into the really high temperatures, uh, all the cameras have like a cooling block, which you can plug in air or water, and that keeps the camera super cool. Like you can run that camera like 24/7. A lot of customers do. They run it in their production environments constantly. So then they just cool it with air or water. And usually you got shop air, and they kind of just plug into that.
Yeah, and I think one of the first things I would think about doing, honestly, is that if I had a camera, I would try to put it in a place that I couldn't go. You have this idea that mechanical equipment can sustain a higher range of injury than I can. So, like you said, if I can only go up to 40
Yeah.
degrees, I would assume that the camera could go 80. But you're saying that, only if it's got the proper cooling attachments.
Yeah. So we even have a high, like if you want to go into a really high temperature, say it's cladding or something, and you're getting up like past 500 degrees, like
Hmm.
we have a solution for that as well. So we pretty much got you covered at any
Any,
temperature
so
range.
what is the solution for 500 degrees? I'm cool. Or is it a secret? Is it an industry secret? Because like I'm
No,
interested. Like,
it's not secret. So it's But basically, you're at that temperature, you want to protect the cables and the camera as well. So it's this like thin wrap that goes around the whole thing. It looks shiny. It looks like a
Is it like the
aluminum foil, but
astronomers, like the
it
astronauts wrap?
yes, yeah, it looks something like that. So it blocks a lot of heat from the outside, but then we also blow air through it, and it keeps it really cool at really high temperatures. So it's called our high temp cooling kit.
Okay, now we got a high definition camera that can deal with lots of temperature. You can get into places where people can't get and technically record all day. Now, I'd imagine that that is a massive amount of data that's coming into a computer. What kind of software slash hardware on the computer side do you guys have to support the camera?
Like, well, just to run the camera, basically any newer modern, like modern within the last like at least 5 even 10 years probably will run it, like no problem. um, as for like recording massive amounts of data, you can actually record only what you want to record. So like say you only want to record when there's an arc, that's the only time it'll record. It won't record like when there's nothing. So we have the feature of recording, it's called auto weld mode, so it'll actually switch the mode. So there's two modes. You have a setup mode for like positioning the camera where everything looks normal, but then you have weld mode, which is actually, it kind of darkens a bit, ready for welding, just kind of like your auto darkening hood. And then when it detects the arc, it'll switch those modes and it will start recording. So you don't have to record all the time and waste the hard drive space for nothing.
And then you can basically just run like your standard video editing software, or do you guys have a software suite that caters to the welding, attributes?
Yeah, so yeah, there in our we have two different pieces of software. One's called Weld Studio. That's kind of like the one that has all the bells and whistles, and then we have another one called System Software. That one is more your operator focused one. It's meant for touch screens, and it goes on our like HMI consoles and you can use it with gloves and everything. Anything that's recorded in there can be played back in either softwares. But yeah, you can. We just output standard AVIs. So if you did want to take it into another program, or even I just open them up in VLC just to view them, or you can even import them into Adobe Premiere or iMovie, wherever you want it, and you can cut it all up. Because I know instructors do that a lot.
Hmm.
They'll make their lesson plans and they'll make the videos they need, and they'll kind of make clips and put them, and they post them online a lot. And actually, you see that quite a bit nowadays.
Yeah, I mean that's the big push between all the colleges, ours included, is to try to get more stuff online for remote learning, especially now that with COVID, it's a big push. Um, on your guys' end, how has COVID affected your business? Better, worse, the same?
Well, it's a bit of everything. Like it's the same because schools wanted it before. It's different because schools are pivoting to online learning. So we'll see a lot of schools inquire about it. Actually, one of the number one question I get is, can we stream this online to our students? And the answer is yeah. So you can like screen share on Zoom, on Skype, whatever you're on, and you can show Weld Studio running. The instructor can totally do his like entire demo, and you can see it all on screen. And I think that's what a lot of instructors want to do.
That's exactly what we want to do as well. We aside from pre-recording certain things, that's not as valuable because really, if you go to YouTube, pretty much everything has been pre-recorded already by somebody in some format. But
Mhm.
it's the live that we would really like to get into, and I think a lot of colleges would like that too. What about high schools? 'Cause, I mean, this is kind of a top tier product. Do you see much high schools reaching out about the software and the hardware?
Yeah, actually, I've been to a lot of different high schools, and if they have a really big push for welding, that's something they want, right? Because if you want to get like a student in, and you want to get them into the welding program, a lot of kids nowadays are kind of like us. We're like really tech guys, and if you want to get into welding and you go, oh look, this cool tech that is a part of this program, it kind of attracts kids, right? And then they just learn with that better because it's techie. I don't know. You just make it more relatable to them, especially if they're into technology.
Yeah, I know, like we got a welding robot, a pretty nice one from Miller, and it's like, man, we should put a camera on that thing. Then you could have like the camera's eye view of it flipping through, fixtures and moving and doing its quick welds. I mean, the world just opens up for the amount of things you can do. Um, Is the camera package like without getting into specifics of prices, obviously, but is this something that the average, home welder could get into to film welds if they were looking to get into the hobby? Just like, some people spend thousands on a camera to photograph birds. Is this something that maybe the home, technophile welder would get into?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I personally, I even have one kit here. I'm at home right now, and I have a kit with me, and it's the one I carry around with me all the time because it's actually the educator's kit. It's in the Pelican with I have all the stuff, so you got everything that you'll need to do stuff. And yeah, that's the best one. If I was like someone who's in welding and I'm super techie and I really want to record, I would probably pick up one of these. Like, because you know me, I'm in music and doing all these different things, computers. Those are like, if you're really into those things, you will buy the $2,000 like mixer or whatever that you want, like the $3,000 laptop. Like, yeah, you'll spend the money if you're really into it. So for someone that's really into it, yeah, totally. And I've seen a few people actually inquire and purchase it because they're just really into it and they want to make videos and make cool videos like
Hmm.
that for welding.
So next question is then, do you guys have an extra educator's kit in a Pelican box that you can just give to me?
I have it right here.
I'll DM you my address, and if one of them goes missing off of a shelf, dude, I won't say anything to anybody.
I don't know where it went.
All right, so now what's the future looking like for Xiris? What do you guys got coming up on the horizon? What's an obstacle or something that you guys are trying to overcome or deal with or invent?
Well, we're always working on new things. We're always like, I'm the guy that goes on the field and I hear all the different things. A lot of times I can get those things implemented, but I hear all the requests. Like I guess the next thing that we do have coming very, very soon is a thermal camera. So now you'll be able to tell the different temperatures of like stuff that you're looking at. So you can now go look at the weld and you go, why was this weld bad? And you can roll back and you go, oh, because over here you see it wasn't as hot as where it was good, So that's a new thing coming out, the new thermal camera. But
That's
we're
what.
working on tons of different stuff. We're working on lots of machine learning and lots of like AI stuff like that. Like I was just actually part of a project where we're trying to um, classify like melt pools and stuff. So when a camera looks at a weld, it can tell you exactly where the melt pool is, if it's like occluded by anything, like if it's a good melt pool, like all of that. And it's pretty cool. There was a demo that was shown after all the processing we did, and it looks pretty promising. But I don't know exactly what we're going to use that for yet. But a lot of cool stuff coming from us.
Man, as soon as you said thermal camera, I came up with like a million applications for that. Like, I mean, that's super fly to have that coming
Yeah,
up on the horizon.
yeah.
Now, as a thermal camera, would it be separate from the imaging camera? Would they be like side by side, kind of like an IMAX style, or would they be the same camera having both functionalities?
So we're looking at all of the kind of possibilities. So like we're trying to make it as affordable and as compact and together. So
Hmm.
I don't know what the engineering team is going to finalize on, but we have in the office we have a whole bunch of different prototypes.
Awesome. So if one of those prototypes ends up in my garage, you see where I'm going with this. There's really only one reason I have a podcast. It's to get free cool things from people.
Who's on next week? Tesla?
I've been trying to get a hold of Elon for a while now because there is a lot of technology that came from his open
Yeah.
patent sourcing that is used in the welding industry now. I bought one of them, and let me tell you, it's a game changer. These IGBT transformers with the
Yeah.
open source technology that he provided. I have a 250 amp welding machine that's the size of a toaster now. Like, I mean, it's wild.
Yeah, they have crazy tech. I love Tesla as well.
Yeah, I know. I'm on the list to get a Tesla 3. I'm on the
The
mail.
Cybertruck.
Yeah, well, the truck, I don't know. I,
Oh,
I like the Rivian truck better, really, as
oh,
fun.
really? I don't like the lights on the Rivian.
Yeah, I
The
think
front.
they're the same
I'm not a
price.
fan.
Yeah.
No, I like the Cybertruck. I like how mean it looks. I don't know if you ever played Halo, but it looks like a warthog.
Yeah, it does.
I no I want I have a Tesla Model 3. I was considering the Cybertruck. I was like, oh man, that'd be amazing, but I don't have anywhere to park something that big.
Well, with something that big and 4x4, you can park it wherever you want.
True, true. because over here it's only like $150 for the reservation. But I was like, oh man. Well, I'll wait until it comes out and we'll see. But I love that Cybertruck. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, odds are I'll probably end up having one. I have lots of cars. I'm a car guy. I have lots of cool
Oh
to-
yeah.
toys. So I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere down the line and one of them shows up here. So
Oh, nice.
okay, so a little bit of selfless promotion now. On February the 17th, we have you guys booked to do basically what we've been talking about this whole show. We're gonna do a live camera event with you guys, and we're gonna have it open to the public for them to drop in and get to witness, the line of cameras or some of the cameras you guys have live
Mhm.
in action, right?
Yep.
And are you gonna be there?
Yep. I will be there, and Leroy will also be there. Another person from Xiris, and yeah, we'll show you everything that we've got.
And are you guys gonna have a welder there and a welding machine, and you're gonna do it for reals?
Oh yeah. So yeah, we just expanded our space. We never had a welding lab before, so now we have a welding lab, so we can do as much like welding and testing as we want. So we can. We had all our cameras one time, just like watching the same weld. It's pretty awesome. We don't usually get a chance to do things like that. So now we have the facilities too. So yeah, you'll see some of that.
That's wild. So like between now and then, we're gonna have to up the tech on both our ends because I want to make sure I have multiple camera feeds for that one. And I know last week I was experimenting with Zoom and running multiple camera feeds, and it's actually not too bad. So
Yeah.
hopefully I can get that all set up and we can figure it out because I would love to have, even if it's possible, just spitball in here, having multiple camera feeds like you just said on the same weld with different cameras, and then
Mhm.
people can actually cycle
Yeah.
through and see the difference live, right?
Yeah, that'd be sweet. So we can actually connect multiple cameras to one like program, and then we can have uh, different quadrants. So we actually have a cell view camera as well, so you can watch like from far away. You can see like the robot or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
cell is, and then we can have the weld camera looking right at the weld, and you can see it really close up with all the melt pool and all the action.
Well, that sounds super exciting. I'm pumped. I'm pumped. We're going to start promoting for that in early January. This episode should be releasing sometime towards the end of January, I think mid-January. So then we'll do the big push for the promotional event between the both of us. I know we're looking forward to it on our end here in Regina to be hosting this for you guys, and I know that we already got students asking about it. So it's going to be super
Nice,
pumped
excellent.
event. Yeah.
Excited over here as well.
All right, Anthony. So that's pretty much the show. Is there anything that you'd like to give to any young, curious minds out there that are kind of coming up in the world, and anything you'd like to say to them?
You know, just keep learning. Like, be curious, ask questions. Like the more you know, like the more you'll understand, and the more you understand, the less you'll be confused. And I don't know. It just keep learning and be curious.
Yeah, and this is another.
That's my motto.
Yeah, and that's another excellent example of how expansive the welding field can be. To just from every aspect of engineering to sales, promotions, everything. There's a welding angle in there. So, thank you very much, Anthony, for being on the show. It was a ton of fun. Hope you had fun.
Thanks, Max. Yeah, I had tons of fun.
Awesome, cool, and thanks for everyone for listening. Make sure you download the shows and follow us on Instagram. I'm AskMax75. Make sure you follow CWB Group as well. The podcast you can get from Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, iTunes. It's all over the place. Google Podcasts. It's up everywhere. So follow us, like us, share us, get the views out there, so I can keep getting lots of guests on the show, like Anthony from Xiris today. So thanks a lot, everybody, and take care.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
You've been listening to the CWB Association Welding Podcast with Max Ceron. If you enjoyed what you heard today, rate our podcast and visit us at cwbassociation.org to learn more. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions or suggestions on what you'd like to learn about in the future. Produced by the CWB Group and presented by Max Ceron. This podcast serves to educate and connect the welding community. Please subscribe, and thank you for listening.